Good evening, everyone. All right, before we get started, please take out your phone. Do this with me. Take out your phone and turn it to silent mode. All right, thanks. If you're using Twitter, our Twitter hashtag is UMAA. Now let's get started. Joshua Bell is one of the world's top violinists, and he plays a violin that's worth a cool $4 million. Now, but one Friday morning in 2007, he donned a baseball cap and played as a busker at a subway station in Washington, D.C. as part of an experiment by the Washington Post. He played several famous pieces of classical music for almost 45 minutes to over 1,000 passers-by. But Joshua only collected a measly $32.17 for his efforts. Yet, just the other night, he was paid very handsomely to perform at a concert. Do you sometimes feel that you're like Joshua Bell playing at the subway? Do you feel sometimes you're performing your heart out, but you're being underpaid and not being recognized for your skills and talents? Now, doing good stuff and being a high performer is no longer enough in this attention economy. You need to fight for the world's most precious resource, which is people's attention, time and attention. And that you need to get people to care about what you have done. And that is where personal branding comes in. So today we have consultant, blogger, speaker, and entrepreneur Trevor here to talk about how to build your personal brand with content marketing and social media. Trevor describes himself as a PR warrior on the front lines of the communication revolution. Trevor helps companies, organizations, individuals make sense of today's hyper-connected marketplace with a focus on social media and content marketing. He blogs at prwarrior.com and produces social media training modules at thereachkit.com. He has published a free ebook called The Micro Manifesto and has recently signed a book deal for a book called Micro Domination: How to Leverage Social Media and Content Marketing to Build a Mini Business Empire Around Your Personal Brand. Please join me in welcoming Trevor Young.
While we're waiting, I'm going to take an Instagram shot, given that we're all friends here. It's all about personal branding. So if you're on the run from the authorities, now's the time to hide your face. Otherwise, you can 1, 2, 3 and wave to the camera. Thank you very much. Put a wonderful filter on that. All looking good. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll... ready to go. And that goes to Twitter. Without the hashtag, I won't do the hashtag. There we go. Okay. Full house. Thank you very much for coming. It's a bit warm. I see a few people with jackets today who didn't get up early enough to watch the news today and see how hot it was going to be. Thanks very much for coming. As I say, it's a really interesting topic, and it's one where, as Enoch said, I'm writing a book about. It's one part of it, but it's where this... I just like to sort of talk about the clash of personal branding and where it's sort of gone, where it has been, but where it is today, and the sorts of things that you have to do to sort of go through it. I'm going to probably talk for about, I think, 20 to 30 minutes or something like that, but then we've got a fair bit of time for questions and answers, or hopefully answers, maybe questions, comments, that sort of thing. So certainly it's going to be half interactive, which suits me fine. So let's get into it. Now, probably you didn't realise when you were growing up that you were already learning about personal branding. And there's a guy called Dr. Seuss. Who, hands up here, who would have read Dr. Seuss? All of you? You probably know the next saying, so I don't even need to put it up because everyone's going to tell me what it is, I think. The next saying is, "Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." And who would have thought that at a time when you're reading and you're a little kid and you're reading Dr. Seuss, and later on in life that's going to come back at you in a personal branding and content marketing seminar. And so as Oscar Wilde also, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And we're getting a bit of, even within 2 slides, we've got a bit of a feel for where it's going. It's about authenticity. And I know it's kind of weird that we have to sort of sit here and talk about being authentic, but I think we've grown up on a diet of celebrities and creating your personal brand and your image and spin doctors and everything is crafted around you. Yet the throwback the other way where it really is working and the people who do it really, really well are the ones who are authentic about everything that they do. So as we go through tonight, I just want you to have at the back of your mind that authenticity is absolutely critical in everything you do in terms of your personal marketing. So when I say that, you know, when everyone's talking about crafting, if you are a Celine Dion, don't try and be a Lady Gaga. Because, I mean, people will know. So this whole notion of image manipulation and everything like that, I want that off the table as far as personal branding is concerned. Sure, there are probably celebrities who get coiffed and an image massaged, but that's not the personal branding we're going to talk about today. So what is brand? Well, I've been in PR and marketing for quite some years. A number of you have here. If you're even in business, you'd be using the word brand. Even 15-year-old kids on American Idol start talking about their personal brand. And I think along with social media, marketing generally, public relations, brand is a really misused word and quite misunderstood. And I'm happy to, at the end of tonight, to sort of bat around different sort of explanations of it. But I try and keep it really, really simple. And really, what anyone thinks about you, that is your brand. So for the purposes of tonight, when I talk brand, it's whatever anyone thinks about you, that is your brand. Your reputation with others, that is your brand. Or as Jeff Bezos likes to say, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I kind of like this, and Jeff Bezos kind of, from Amazon.com, knows a little bit about branding and marketing. But the interesting thing about here is that a friend of mine, Michelle Hogan, who is a branding expert, she runs a business called Brandology and has been for many, many years. And when she's talking to people and consulting about brand, she actually says, we're not going to talk about brand today. I'm talking with her next week and we're talking about branding and marketing. And she says, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about keeping your promises. And her whole thing about branding is that if you always do what you'll say you'll do, then your reputation and how people see you, your colleagues, your peers, your clients, they'll have a positive and a consistent response to you. And that's what she's always on about that. So when we do talk about branding, yes, people think logos are their brand. It's not. People think the way they dress or a certain look. They're all visual manifestations of your brand, very important. Going back to Lady Gaga, if you are a Celine Dion, you don't want to be looking like Lady Gaga and just have a disconnect. So it's what people think about you, it's people's perceptions. And that's when we're talking personal brand, that's where it is. So I look at the art of marketing. I called it the art of marketing because I had this great picture and it was art. And the art of personal marketing sort of worked well. So I wanted to go down this path. But these are what I call the three pillars of underpinning everything that you'll do in more of a character point of view. How you build your character and using personal brand is your character. And the first one's attention. And Enoch said at the start how we live in the attention economy. And we do live in the attention economy. We live in the ideas economy as well. Attention is scarce today. Ideas are pretty scarce too because there's a lot of Me Too stuff. There's not much originality. Everything's copied. So if you can get people's attention and do it in a really respectful way, if you've got ideas, then you're not halfway there, but you're on the first. You're at least on the grid. Now, the whole thing about getting people's attention is to be able to do it not in the old way of doing it, not creating more noise, not being pitching. Always, I think when we look at marketing, when I talk marketing, I'm talking brands, companies, people, it's always been about going for the big kill or the big pitch or here's my business card, and it's been push, 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 push all the time. And now you have to attract attention to you. Attract attention to your story and to your ideas and to your opinions. And therefore you've got to be a little bit more remarkable. You've got to stand higher above than everyone else with your thinking and your ideas. So it's attracting people to you versus what it's always been in the past is really pushing out, knocking on doors, getting in people's faces, that whole interruption. It kind of was really hardcore years ago, but now when people have got so many channels, they're so harried, they've got no time and they've got no inclination, you need to be a little bit more remarkable in how you attract their attention. So as we're going through this, always think about the things that you can do to attract people's attention. Respect is another really important one. And I think particularly when you talk personal brand, you're talking humans and people to people. And we like to do business with people who we respect. And you have to earn that respect. You can't buy that respect. You look at all the brands or the people that you respect, all the teachers or your peers who you respect. Why do you respect them? I mean, we've also got to respect people's time. We've got to respect their headspace. We've got to respect their opinions. We've got to respect their intellect. And by showing up and adding value and getting involved, these are all things you can do to earn people's respect. And the final one is, for T, is trust. And trust is our currency today. In a social marketplace, trust in brands is the #1 thing. Now, I do some work with Edelman, which is the world's biggest PR firm, and every year Edelman have a thing called the Trust Barometer. Just Google Edelman Trust Barometer in 2012 and up will come the results, and we do it on a global basis for 12 years it's been going. So you could basically, the report takes the pulse of people's trust in government, or monitors people's trust in government, in media, in business. And it's quite interesting because, you know, in Australia, something like 60-something% of people don't trust the government to do what they say they do. The CEO, as a source of not inspiration, as a source of information, the CEO is trusted probably about 38%, so really low. What the people that really are trusted in organisations, and probably a lot of you here, are internal experts or academics brought in, but you're an expert in your field. And they sort of sit around, I've got a whole lot of figures in my head, but I think it's around the 72, 71%. They're pretty even. And they've been high for a very long time. And, you know, so they're almost double the CEO. So people trust internal experts and academics and experts brought in, third-party experts. And that's a pretty amazing thing. They're double, people trust them as a source of information, double than they do the CEO. And obviously that leads you to think, why don't more companies wheel out the experts? But that's, you know, that's something that they've got to work out for. But that's really interesting. So if you are an expert, you're already in a really good space because people do trust experts. It's a matter of becoming more than an expert now and becoming an authority. Because I don't know what space you're in, but you know, there's a broad bunch of you here. But if you're an expert in an area, there's a lot of experts in that area probably in your space. But there's not many that are authorities. And authorities are the people that people listen to and they share their stuff and they read them and they buy from them and the media come to them for quotes and things like that. So I think there's a big shift between going from being an expert to an authority. And an authority is someone people trust. So trust being, how can you build trust with people? Well, you can do it by creating content, which we'll talk about later, creating content and sharing ideas and giving freely of your knowledge and your expertise. You know, if you hold that stuff into you, no one knows what you are, what you stand for. You give it out, you give away good stuff. And that's really, really important because that builds trust. Being open and transparent all the time, online and offline, everything you do online should be replicated offline as well. Being open and transparent always builds trust. And this is really more important today than ever before because of the social web. And anyone who's been on social media for any given time knows that, you know, particularly on Twitter, you are transparent. You are hat tip people, you do give your sources. You're always open about what you know and what you don't know. And so that's one way. And the other one is being human. Once again, coming back to that theme of being authentic and real, and if you've got a quirky nature, putting that out. Because the moment you start shielding all of that sort of stuff, and for some reason, we work in a corporation, you put on a suit, and all of a sudden your personality is different. And that doesn't really engender trust. All of a sudden, the words you use are psychobabble and management speak and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't build trust because people don't understand it and they turn off. So trust is really, really important. It's the social currency of today, and it's the number one thing you should be doing, anything that you're doing. So all of the things that you do, at any opportunity, you should be looking at how can I build trust. And any time you're collaborating with people, communicating or connecting with others and people you've never met before, always have it at the back of your mind. Trust is the number one thing. I swear this is the ugliest slide for the lot, but I did a bit of grass and a bit of sky, so I did tart it up for you a little bit. This is my way, I wouldn't call it secret sauce because it's not secret anymore. What would you like people to say about you when you're not in the room? Remember going back to Jeff Bezos from Amazon. What would you like people to say about you when you're not in the room? And there's two things that we can do today that we couldn't do 5, 6, 7 years ago, and not to any degree of scale or easily. And that is creating content and social media participation. Now let's start off with social media participation. I'm presuming everyone here is on Facebook. Hands up. Yep. Half of Australia, 11.5 million is on it, but you're all cool and groovy people, so you're all on it. Twitter? Yeah, good half. We'll come to LinkedIn later. But social media participation, so that's if it's on Twitter, or if it's liking things, it's being out and talking on other people's blogs, for example, commenting on their blogs. It might be retweeting other people's things. If someone's on Twitter and they're asking a question or holding a poll, it's getting involved. It's just doing stuff as you would a human being rather than just sit back. It's how can I hat tip other people? How can I share their content? How can I put the spotlight on other people and do it in a social media sense? Because it's about other people, it's not about you, and that's how you build trust and profile and how you build respect with people. So what are the things that you can do in a social media participation-wise? If you're on Twitter now, and we'll probably go into this a little bit later, but I'm thinking if something like if you're on Twitter now and you tweet 5 times a day, why not do it 15? And why not do it in a really good way that helps people and adds value? If you're on Facebook, do you just keep liking stuff without adding any comments? So it's all about the participating. Going onto someone's blog, you might read a post and think that's fantastic, but never write anything. Leave a note, let them know. Let them know. You might listen to a podcast you think is fantastic. Let them know. Let other people know. Why hold that knowledge in? So that's when I say social media participation, that's actually going out and doing stuff. We're hardwired for it. We're human beings. It's what we do. Create, distribute, and share content. This is where to take things up a notch. The people who are building really powerful personal brands, and we're seeing it now, there's guys that 4 or 5 years ago you've never heard of and now commanding 22 grand a speech. You know, these people are doing it on the back of content. And they've worked hard at building that content. Don't let anyone say that it's easy to do content. It's not. It takes time, it takes effort. Just to press publish, put your thoughts out there for the world to see, you need clarity and focus with what you're doing. You need a commitment and a belief in who you are and what you're doing. But because it's a little bit harder and it takes a little bit more effort, people don't do it. So that provides you with a fantastic opportunity. And so content is not just a blog post, but blogging is really good. It could be a video, it could be images or photos, or you could share some infographics, all sorts of different things. You might be a cartoonist, get it out there, create the content. But content, when we think content too, could also, I'm not saying you have to do it, but a webinar or an ebook or a white paper or any of these things. We've got so much at our disposal now that we can do really, really quickly and cheaply. You could go home now, you could do it on your laptop now, And you can go onto Posterous or Tumblr, and within a minute you've got a blog up and running in a global soapbox. What are you going to write? What are you going to share? So content is really where it's at, and that's what we'll keep coming back to today. But be aware that there is effort involved. But if you want to take things up a notch, content's where it's going to be. And good old face-to-face, you know, actually getting out and talking to people. I've got to say that I reckon social media is the best thing for face-to-face. I think it's face-to-face now is more important than ever before because of social media. You can go to an event and meet people and then deepen that relationship online, or you can meet people online, go to events where they are and meetups, etc. And by the time you meet them, it feels like meeting number five. So you've got a depth of connection. That's just fantastic to be able to do that because you can build your network really, really super quickly, but you've still got to want to help people. You've still got to get involved. You can't be out there pitching your wares all the time. So that is the equation, the not-so-secret sauce. So interrogation time. Sometimes we need to sort of think these things through. And once again, it's not about creating an image. It's not about creating this personal brand. But it's really getting down deep inside and what do you stand for? So when we look at 1 year from now, what do you want to be doing in a professional sense? What do you want to be doing? Do you want to be running a business? 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing? What's the title in the job that you... Are you running a startup? Are you running a business? Because why that's important is because things that you do today can lead to that. Now I call it personal meandering, purposeful meandering. I can't even say who did it because I read it somewhere about purposeful meandering. I've said it enough times that I think I created that. Purposeful meandering means I need to get over there, generally. And I might go off the track. I might go over here, go through there, jump over the chairs, but I'll get in that general direction eventually. And I kind of like that because the problem is when we set goals and you get all these rah-rahs saying, you've got to set goals, man, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you know, you've got to peg your action every day. That's fine, I get it. But who does that, you know? How many people have written down goals and they're still gathering dust in their drawer next to their bed? The problem with goals is that sometimes we're in an area that changes so much, you might not even be able to see a lot of the opportunities there if you're so goal-focused. The opportunities are either side. But if you sort of are a bit more meandering, you've still got to focus in a direction, but you just might veer off and experiment a little bit. I reckon that's a better way to go. So we're thinking personal branding now. Where do you want to be in a year's time? Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? What's the job you want? Do you want to be running a business? Because the micro interactions you do now, the content you create before you sort of need to do it. It's all about building your community before you need it. How many times do we see companies and they want to just get out and push their products online, but the fact is they've got no one following them because they've never built a community of supporters or a network behind them. So the things that you can do today are starting to build that network. You've already got it. You've already got peers and colleagues and friends and family. That's the start of your network. And you now need to start building it even bigger. But you need to start thinking, where do I want to be generally? Because that can feed into your thinking further on. And spheres of conversation. Now I do this with big companies, small companies, individuals. It's a really easy graph to draw. So that's why I like it. But the bottom line is, what discussions do you want to start or be part of? What topics do you want to ignite debate around? What conversations do you want to lead? What do you want to be known for? Stick them in a Venn diagram. Because the things with that is, you're starting to give yourself focus and clarity. If that's all you do, at least you're halfway there. But if you just don't know where you want to be or where you're going to go, it makes it hard to create content, because what are you creating for? If you're going to curate content or share 5 tips a day on Twitter, what is that going to be about? Wouldn't it be better that that's at least pointing you in a right direction? So get your spheres of conversation down. So 5 power, when I wrote this Freudian slip, I had 5 power trips for building your brand today. First one, and this is the most important. You're going to start reading a lot about platform. Platform. If you want to build your personal brand beyond and extend it beyond your friends, your family, your peers and your colleagues, you're going to need a robust platform from which to get noticed, from which to amplify your story or your message, from which to share your ideas and express your opinions and your views. You're going to need a platform. Now, the good thing with a platform is today is that it's a lot easier than it used to be. Yesterday, a few years back, to have a platform, you needed a book deal, a record deal, you needed a big sporting contract, you needed a column in the Herald Sun, you needed a radio show, you needed a TV spot. That was your platform to a broader audience. There was always a gatekeeper there deeming you, are you worthy enough for this spot? Today you can be your own media channel, you can be your own TV network, your own radio station, your own online magazine. You can create your own platform. So when I talk about platform, I talk about it could be your blog. So anything that builds your audience. So it could be a blog, could be a podcast, it could be an online video show that you create. Plus your followings on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. Plus, if you've got a column or something in the local industry newsletter or news or whatever it is, most times they're online now, it's this aggregated audience which is now your platform. So your unified presence across the web, across social networks and your content you're publishing, combined, that aggregated audience. So all of those elements, think of them as a plank. And the more hence that, the more planks you've got, the more solid your platform. And once you've got a platform, you can be noticed and heard. You're putting content out, you're getting people interacting with you, you're building your audience. You're never going to start with a massive audience, but you can build it and build it and build it. If you've got 500 followers on Twitter, that's a start. You've got chuck in LinkedIn as well and Facebook. Put in a blog. All of a sudden, your audience is starting to grow. That is a platform. The most powerful thing anyone has got today, because it can take you places that you wouldn't believe. And we're seeing it today, whether there's Darren Rouse, who lives in Melbourne, who's one of the top bloggers in the world, with up to 4 or 5 million readers a month. He's built a platform, bloody big platform too, by the way. You know, there's a whole stack of people now, of people you won't know their names, but in their niche and their super niche, they're big because they've built a platform, they've shared their ideas, people have come to them, and all of a sudden their audience is growing across Twitter, Facebook, and across their blogs, etc. Number 2, and I don't want to sound like a scratch record, but give. There's a guy called Brian Solis, S-O-L-I-S, briansolis.com. He's a sort of a new media guru, writes a couple of best-selling books in the space, really worth looking at. He sort of gets a little bit intellectual on stuff. Really, really, really smart guy. And he talks about relentless giving. It's a bloody big word, that hard word, relentless giving. That means giving day in, day out, constantly. So this is the top line. This is the stuff that you have to do to really do it. If you only want to go half there, well, at least you know where the bar is. Because the people that are out there doing it are doing it in a big way. They're blogging maybe daily. They're on Twitter. They're on Facebook. They commit. There's a guy who's here has heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. A couple of people. Check out a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. V-A-Y-N-E-R-C-H-U-K. And he turned his wine library retail operation, took over from the old man and turned it from about an $8 million business into a $60 million business. He did that through online marketing, but what he also did, which he's taken his career in a whole new direction, is that he did a daily wine show. This is in America, a guy who's belligerent and in your face and rants and raves, Belarus born, just right into it, full entrepreneurial. And he helped, every day he did a thing about wine on TV. He had about 80,000 to 100,000 viewers a day. Now he's got a multi-million-dollar book deal. He's got one of the fastest growing social media agencies. He talks, he speaks, he's an angel investor. He's done all these things. And he gives and gives and gives. But when he was building it, no one ever saw the effort that he responded to virtually everyone on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook who talked to him. And he had a fan base of hundreds of thousands, if not getting close to 1 million. He's got over 1 million followers on Twitter. So he was giving and giving and giving, and that's how he built his community. Not saying you have to go that far, but by doing that, he's now top of the tree in his space. So the first two were probably a bit more strategic. The next three are going to be tactical. LinkedIn. Everyone here on LinkedIn? Everyone got a photo that you're really happy with and does you justice? Everyone written your profile page and there's nothing missing. You haven't just done really selectively the last 5 years and dropped out before that, because what are you, a spy? Did you spend a little bit of time in the big house? You know, that's trust. Putting what you've done in the past, I mean, you don't have to go back to primary school, of course, but having a little bit of, this is where I've tracked going through, getting recommendations, actively getting recommendations. You know, when I was talking about social media participation, you might know at the moment you can go and endorse people. You've always been able to recommend people on LinkedIn. Now you can endorse them for single things. So give back to other people, don't just expect all that back. But in LinkedIn, I mean, as I say, Facebook for suits, you kind of got to be in there. When I first started and I'd connect with someone on LinkedIn, they'd say, what are you, a freak? Today, people will almost always be on LinkedIn. But there's a couple of tips that I think that have really worked for me. One is, whenever I have a meeting, or someone that I really want to connect with, and I've had a meeting, or I've even had a phone call, a really good, robust phone call with them, or whatever, I'll send them in a LinkedIn. Because I don't get business cards anymore. I've got 5,000 business cards. I'm never going to get to them. I've never found an intern even willing enough to put them in some semblance of order, in which case, if they ever did, I would never look at them again. Everything is on, including everyone's phone number and their email, is on LinkedIn. Make it a habit. Within 12 hours, or if you've had a meeting in the car on the way back, link in with them. Make it the habit. All of these things are daily habits to do. It's not, I'm going to do stuff at the end of the week. It's daily habits of micro actions that you can do. And LinkedIn is a really good habit to get into if you do nothing else. Nothing else but start linking in with people. The other thing is that LinkedIn often will say, recommend people that you may know. If you do know them, link in with them. Make it a habit. Make it part of your thing. Join groups. Don't have to join every group known to man, but join groups and participate in one or two of them, because it helps go in and add value. Once again, social media participation. Add value. Ask questions. Answer people's questions. Get in and help. You'll get known. I know one guy set up a group. He's in financial planning. He set up a group on LinkedIn, and now he's got about 500 members of that group. And he's kingpin. Really cool. What did he do? He actually got off his ass and did something and set it up, and now the community runs itself, and he dips in and out. So there's so many things you can do with LinkedIn. They're making change. I know Facebook makes a lot of changes. LinkedIn is really starting to make changes as well. So make sure your profile page does you justice. And don't write it like management speak, but put your personality and your authentic self in. So I told you authenticity was going to come back. Embrace Twitter. Okay, for the half in the room, you're cool. The other half, what's wrong? You're in business. You need to build your network. The good thing, so if someone once said that Twitter is like a bar, LinkedIn's like the Chamber of Commerce, which I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever been to a Chamber of Commerce. Facebook is for people that you want to invite in your living room. How many people have got 500 people with you? How many of those would you invite to your living room? But Twitter being the bar, that's the really cool thing, because when you go into a bar, you know, you'll get the lay of the land, you'll see who's interesting, who's doing some nice stuff. You know, you'll make friends with people who you will have never met before. So I can honestly say that since however long I've been on Twitter, I have my my network has exploded because I've met people that I never would have met before. I've gone to meetups, I've gone to tweet-ups, I've gone to seminars, I've done everything because of Twitter's probably the number one thing. And if you're in business, Twitter is fantastic because if you're out there and you're actually doing something, you will get new business leads from it. But if you only want to go in and tweet once every 2 days, don't bother. If you want to get involved and add value, do it. But I can tell you now that the people who are on Twitter doing forget this troll stuff. That's not Twitter. That's the Daily Telly wanting a headline, ban all trolls. That's what we could do 2 hours on that. But the people I've met on Twitter are the nicest, most interesting and funniest people I think I've ever met. So I can't only recommend it highly enough. I know a lot of people who use it really, really well. But the fact is that they use it. They turn up, they share content that's relevant. So if you're going to be in this space, your spheres of conversation, you obviously read in that area. Do you share that stuff? You might think this is a really great piece in Fast Company. Put it out there, but also put your thoughts and your insight on it. So share on Twitter, interact, help other people, and I think you'll find, follow people, they'll follow you back. Over time, micro interactions, make it part of your day-to-day. And why is this? This is a guy called Iggy Pintado. He's got a book called Connection Generation. Lives in Sydney. He talks about every connection is a potential business or social opportunity. Now, if you put it in that respect, it's a really, really cool thing. He's absolutely right. You don't know what's around the corner. Just the same as if you go to a networking night, remember those, and you don't know that you're going to meet someone who might change the course of your life. Marketing today, whether it's marketing your brand or not, is very, very easy. It's marketing truism. People do business, or relate to, people who they know, they like, and they trust. That's it. So your jobs, to build your personal brand, is get more people to know you, more people to like you, and more people to trust you. So all of these tools help expand your network, so get more people to know you. If you work them well, people will like you. And then over time, people will trust you. You have to build that over time. So what Iggy's saying is every connection, you've got no idea what's around the corner. So on Twitter, you know, I've rekindled relationships that have been just sensational with people who I pitched to in PR, 8 years ago, and now that's a solid business client. I mean, these are the sorts of things you're not going to know because you don't know who's on there. So go in with an open mind, meet people, just have fun, and you never know what's around the corner. And about me. Is anyone on about me? About.me? It's pretty cool. You need a really nice photo. Or not necessarily nice, and that's not me, by the way. You've got it's just like a jumping point. It's just like if you do nothing else, you have Twitter, LinkedIn, and About Me. Because About Me you'll get found, and it's just a jumping off point. So you put all your social networks on it, a little blurb about you, and the fact that you put your face up there, this is who I am, and there's a bit of personality to it, she's obviously something to do with sound, then all of a sudden, little things, it'll take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you can't pick which photo to put in. But they're little things that all of a sudden you've got at least a pool of little outposts that are working for you. I like this from Tom Peters. Have a look at an article called A Brand Called You. He wrote it in 1997. It was the cover story of Fast Company magazine, still the best business magazine. And if you just Google Brand Called You, it'll come up probably two or one, two or three. So it gets a lot of hits, still very relevant today. I don't know this one off by heart. We are CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. To be in business today, our most important job is to be a head marketer for a brand called You. The difference when he wrote that in 97, there was no social media, no way of creating content cheaply and getting it out there really quickly. But the essence of what he was talking about was interesting, and last year I'd read the story again and I put on Twitter saying I just think it was a great article, and it's still got cachet today. And he tweeted back and said, actually 1997, gosh, I first introduced the whole concept of this going back in the year before, and he said, would you believe I did it in England when I first talked about Brain Called You to a group of accountants in London. So it was pretty cool that Tom Peters, by the way, said, and this bloke had a book called In Search of Excellence, you might recall. One of the very first big business books that came out, probably that broke the genre of business books and how they were bestsellers. I think he's denounced it ever since because all the companies that he said were excellent have all gone belly up since. But he's had the guts to say, I think it's a bit different now. But he blogs and tweets, etc. Like he's an older dude. But there's a quote with him in an interview with Seth Godin who's saying how blogging is hands down the best ever thing he has ever done from a marketing and personal branding sense, ever. And you're talking about a McKinsey guy, best-selling author, everything. He's a big blogging fan. And I don't know this terribly well because I just ran into it late last night. There's a guy called Gavin Heaton, runs a really good blog, one of Australia's top bloggers, called Servant of Chaos. Still probably the best name of a blog. And he's put up, it's probably worth a look actually, it's probably the latest article on his blog, and it's talking about recruitment and the use of social media, and there's a survey attached to it of some findings, and I can't remember them off the top of the head, but what I liked about him is he said, today you need the 4 Bs, and that's I've got the art of personal marketing, he's got the 4 Bs, but really he's about be found. So LinkedIn and About Me, he likes About Me as well. I think if you want to take it up a notch, a personal website, but that's not him, that's me. I think a personal website all of a sudden takes you up a notch again. Everything you do takes you a head and shoulders above the next guy. Be known, showcase your skills. So this is about blogging and being out there on these social platforms and publishing your content and your insights and your ideas, because that is of value to an employer. If I was employing 2 people, I had 2 people. I had a job down to the last 2 people, and all intents and purposes, both pretty cool, both probably the right experience. No one wanted more money than the other. All good. But one, I can't find, so obviously he's been in jail online. And 2, the other one's got a blog about coffee in Melbourne or whatever. At least I can see they're out doing stuff and they're writing and they get it. Be trusted. It's not just who you know, but who you're connected to, says Gavin, which I think is a really good point too. It's all about connection today. And the 4th one is to show that you are successful. So are there any case studies you can link to? What are some outcomes and learnings that you're allowed to talk about? And to paint a bit of a broader picture than just your normal resume. I'm not so sure employees even look at a resume anymore. But, there are different ways to do it. So if you're active in this space, you can always point these things to an employer, and at least they can check you out and you're transparent about it. Okay, coming to the home straight. There's a lot of stuff to do. There's things like blogging and video is the number one now. Video's just going crazy at the moment. Audio, good old podcasting, really simple. You can do it off your computer. Maybe these are tools that you want to do. Some people love the camera, some people hate it, some people would prefer to write. But it doesn't matter. Some people don't want to create content, but they'd rather curate it. There are people that don't create anything, but they're really good filters in their space, and they read and they think that's a good article, that's a good one, and they put an insight over the top and push it out. Those people are going to be sought after because how much stuff is out there? A lot. And there's getting more and more stuff, more content out there. Now, the content's not going to stop, but what we're going to be doing is become a lot more filtered in the way we do it, and we'll turn to sources that we believe in. So we might look at the Fin Review, but we'll also look at this blogger, and we might get Business Spectator, and I'll follow this guy on Twitter because his stuff's really good. And by the way, there's this guy over here, and they're curating all the best stuff from America, and they've got their finger on the pulse. Why should I do it when I can go to one person who'll do it all for me? That is a really good way to do it. But it's an attitude. You've got to want to do it. You've got to want to share. Now, I take it the fact that you've come out here on a Thursday night, you want to improve your personal brand. You want to look at how do I incorporate content and social media in it. But it still takes an attitude to give relentlessly, to be out there doing it. Does it take time? Yes. Does it take effort? Absolutely. But the rewards that you see from the people that are doing it, and even doing it for a short time sometimes, because the moment you commit to doing stuff like that, all of a sudden you're helping people, you get known by them. So it's a question of attitude, which this guy's got plenty of. I bet you there's a few gaps in his LinkedIn page. What do you reckon? And above all, this is probably my favourite saying, is be interesting and interested in others. You know, what was marketing all about in the old days? Push, 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 push. And it still is push, push. Here, buy my product. Here, take my business card. Here, I'm pitching you something. Don't even know who you are. You're building a relationship with me. But if you're interesting, I will notice. So be interesting. People will notice. Remember going back to attracting attention. Attract it for the right reasons. Don't go into a bar like Twitter and scream and attract attention. That way you'll attract it all right. You'll get booted out. Attract it in all the right ways. You know the right ways. You're human beings. You know what you don't like. But also be interested in others, and that's the giving part. Now, there's someone in the audience called Lou Hardy. She's the one sitting down low in the seat, right there in the middle. Lou's interesting, and she's interested. But Lou does a thing, when I'm talking about doing things over and above, it doesn't necessarily have to be about your work. Now, Lou is a content creator, and she talks about content marketing and social media and all this space. And she's very good at it, and she passes stuff along, and she shares it, and she writes all the time. So that's the business side. But she's also involved in a project by an organisation called onegirl.org, and they're about educating girls and women in Sierra Leone. And they've got a campaign coming up in October. The problem with Lou is that she doesn't know it's not October yet. She's been doing this for September. She's a bit of the vanguard early on. But it's called Do It in a Dress. So for October, kind of like November, I suppose. Instead of growing a mo, you wear a dress.
I'm not good with a mo.
You're not good with a mo, okay. But it's Do It in a Dress. So Lou's she blogs about it, she's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, and she's bringing other people into the fold. I was at an event the other day, and Lou and one of the guys who's running it brought a dress, so I had to wear a dress at the event. But it's involving people, it's community, whatever that community is, whatever that idea is, that cuts through because it's a really cool idea. It begs the question, why? And the moment anyone asks why, then you get the opportunity to tell a story. But don't be one-dimensional, don't all just be about business. Sometimes it's a social business thing that's happening. There's something that, there's one guy, and if you look at the hashtag super awesome micro project, there's a little bit of muttering around it, but we're all sworn to secrecy. And there's a small group in Melbourne involved in it, and it will be released soon. And what this guy has done is come up with something that's super awesome micro project. It's super awesome anyway, if it gets going. But when it comes out, you'll notice that it's not anything to do with his business, but he's got these cadre of people behind him to support it because it's a really cool idea. So always think, what are some cool ideas? What are some social business things that I can get involved in? Are you social entrepreneurs? Have you seen Charity Water and seen what Charity Water do? Get out of business and start looking at other things because they're the things that are really changing the ballgame in terms of social media and content. So Lou's over there and she's, you go and do it in a dress, you can see her in uniform everywhere. Back to Dr. Seuss. Why fit out when you were born? Why fit in when you were born to stand out? So I wasn't kidding. There's a lot more where that comes from, but you're only getting 2 tonight. I think it's many. Any questions, comments? We've got time. Okay.
Hi, my name's Tom Collins. I had a question about your second point about being relentless. My argument would be that actually relentless can be negative towards your brand. That you take LinkedIn feeds, Facebook feeds. If, for example, I'm not interested in baby pictures and I get baby pictures on Facebook all the time, I just turn off to it. If I'm getting email marketing from a particular company every day about the office, I turn off to it. I think relentless can actually be a turn off.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I use the word relentless because he used it and I thought it was a really, when he said it, it really made sense. Because I think if you just say, if I said, come here and said, you've got to give, you know, you've got to write some content, get it out there, tweet and do a few things, then everyone will go back and do one thing. But I think the word relentless means, sometimes you think like you're overkilling it, you're doing a lot, but I think in the normal scale of things, relentless means just be on it on a day-to-day basis. It's not something you just do all in one hit at the end of the week or once per month, which a lot of people do. They rush and they do all this activity, and I think, well, I've done all my stuff. Because it takes time to market your brand, whether it's your personal brand or your business brand, or any of the business that you work for. But I think by saying relentless, at least it puts it on the agenda that kind of like a day-to-day thing, you've got to be doing little things. So it's lots of little things and it's a day-to-day habit, is the way I would read it. When I heard him interviewed and he said that, that's what he was about. I mean, he writes some really, really good content that normally you'd probably pay to get in a magazine. And you can get it for free. So if you look at briansolis.com and you see the quality of stuff that he's giving, that he's talking about relentless in quality as well. So it's not necessarily punching people over the head. It's about really good quality, but doing it often.
Trevor, I'd be interested to hear how you reconcile a personal brand, somebody's personal interests or personal passions, and their corporate or professional life. You have somebody who's busy building a personal brand around obviously what they get paid for.
Yep.
Who might have personal passions or interests that are, you know, an employer might not look fondly on, or that are somehow competing to certain generations.
I mean, and that's an issue with anything, isn't it? I mean, you really, and it's something that the business world's got to come to grips with too, and it is struggling. I mean, we live in a pretty conservative business environment. I mean, if you look at the businesses that are really nailing it overseas, they've got that social business all the way through it, so they don't mind, they want quirkiness. But I look at, you know, you do start to see, and this is once again, sometimes you can do these things outside, whether it's what is your interest and have a blog about food or something. I don't think it always necessarily has to, because I know a lot of people that they got their work, but they really want to do this over here. And so what I'm saying is, why don't you do that over there? I mean, you might be a restaurant reviewer, but you're a banker on the side. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that. And people are actually coming out of their shells a bit. You know, I know people who work, they're CPAs, and, you know, they're now saying that this is where I work, where they didn't 2 years ago. So I think we're softening. I know it's an issue, it's going to be different from wherever you are. And I mean, I've been lucky enough to run my own business. I've been in companies where they want you to be who you are. That's the goal. But I mean, I think there are certain things that you can do. I was doing a talk with all these financial planners recently, and one guy rocked up in orange pants and like a green top, like it was iridescent, and he was about 60, so it was sort of okay. And he said, "Oh, you know, they don't really like me wearing this into work." And I thought, "Oh, can't understand." Right? And he was the same sort of deal. He was quite a sort of a hippie bloke, but he was a financial planner. And I said, well, there's not a reason why you can't be dressed a little bit differently, but you've also got to juggle the things. You can't. It doesn't mean you can't be yourself, but okay, go to work like that. But what will customers think? But when it comes to your attitude, you can sort of be a bit more laid back anyway, because that might attract more people. I know guys out there that, you know, whether they're advisors or consultants or whatever, and people love them because they are who they are.
Yep, so that's a great point. My dad's a bit on the wild side, coming from that era as well. And I always think, do I take him down or just let him be? It doesn't matter what I think anyway.
Right, he doesn't wear orange pants.
It's blue. But yeah, your formula is good. It's great. I'm doing most of it, and I've got the right attitude. But a lot of my clients don't necessarily. They want the end result, but they don't really understand what's the mechanics of it, and they don't really want to go through it. They just want to get to the end result. And my question is, who doesn't it work for?
Well, just when I think, in terms of content marketing, I'll talk about now, which is about creating content to attract people to you rather than pushing your brand. So let's just talk generally in that space. You know, I look at industries, just when I think there's an industry that, geez, I don't reckon this is going to work for, up pops something like King Arthur Flour in the States, which is a 220-year-old company. Flour, not flowers, white stuff. And they are one of the best content marketers I've ever seen. Because what they do is that they don't push their product, flour, they celebrate baking. And they attract people who are interested in baking, and they also teach them, and they also help commercial bakers as well be really, really better at what they do. So their thinking is the better you are at this stuff, the more educated you are, the more passionate you are, then you'll buy our flour, which is the Rolls-Royce flour. You can buy it as a commodity. You can buy it for half the price elsewhere. And have a look at King Arthur Flour. I just interviewed one of the social media people on a Skype interview the other day. And, you know, she's probably 60 and sitting there with a hat, you can hardly see her, and the company's 220 years old, and they deal in flour, and yet they are doing it better than anyone, and they're really connecting with people. You know, there's a blogger who runs a steel company in England, in Scotland, I think, he's got a blog called The Tin Basher. So, you know, there are really weird examples. What area are you in?
Web development.
Web development. But, you know, you're in an area where, sure, people want the end result, but they want to know that you know what you're talking about. They want to know and be educated. I mean, the more educated that a client can be, they'll come to you because they've read your stuff, they like what you're doing. I know one web developer who's even moved beyond web now because he was starting to write in this certain space, and he's got someone from one of the massive companies overseas read his stuff and is now over there doing a deal. So, you know, I can't say that happens all the time, but when you're in a semi-commodity business, there's a million out there, how are you going to differentiate you from the next guy when you both pretty much have done really good things and price-wise you're about the same and hey, I like the look of you both. But how many web developers too have got pictures of their team? Not many. Why not? You've seen accountants and financial planners' websites. Looks like it's all been done by the one person. They don't even put their people. They're in a people business and they're still not even putting people in there. You're using the same iStock photo likeness shots. So it's about humanising your business a bit too. Have a personality, get the people out there. Who are these people? You're in a creative business where you can actually probably get away with that a lot more. And these are what these crazy people do. And let them tell your story. Give them things to write about. What are their passions? Maybe you've got a closet Pinterest freak in there. And, you know, they can talk all about why Pinterest is good for brands and stuff. So someone comes to your website and they look, oh, well, at least you've got stuff happening and there's a degree of willingness to share, whereas the other guy's got this, I'm going to give him a web development gig to you and you've got the world's worst website. So I just believe it. I just see it every day. I just see it. But it's the ones that do it because they want to do it and you can feel the passion when you go onto their website, not the ones that put a blog up because we think we have to. Questions? Oh.
Just
got to reward the people in front.
Before I continue, I know it's 7:30, so for those of you who need to leave, please feel free to leave. But we'll take another 15 minutes of questions, and then we'll go over to Prince Alfred Hotel to continue the conversation.
Just a quick question about the art of branding theme we were talking before.
Yep.
Do all three of the elements have to, I suppose, be there in order for you to be successful? Is there ever a situation, say, where you're trusted but you're not respected?
Well, it's one thing. I think it's just nice to be. Yeah, it's just about whether you attract attention, respect, and trust. I mean, I don't think that just goes into whole branding. I just think that when you want to market yourself and be out there as a person, take branding out of it, that's just your reputation, then you need to get noticed, so you need to attract attention for starters, rather than hammering people. So attract attention, that's got to work for you. I think respect and trust go together. I think they're two really vital characteristics that you want people to like you, to respect you and to trust you. I just think they're really good things. It's just that it was harder to do years ago. Now you can build that trust through transparency and being online. But it is about attracting attention. You still got to attract it.
Do you want to say anything about this? Maybe, I guess one of the risks of industrial ecosystem is that.
Oh, yeah. This bloody word's going to haunt me. Good call. Listen, if you want to be successful in anything, it's going to take you time. I mean, what did you have to do before to get noticed? You know, you still had to write articles or you had to go to a lot of events. This time, if you go to an event, you might know more people. So yes, it can make you, I think doing a lot of these tools can make you a bit smarter because, you know, it will reinforce, if you go to an event and you meet people there, you can keep in touch with them, otherwise it was always going to be a lot harder. And vice versa, you might meet people going back the other way. You've built your network a lot quicker than you would have before, which was very one by one by one. How many network meetings you've gone and you're bailed up in the corner and you look at your clock because you need to meet more people? That's not an issue online. What I advocate, and I do spend a fair bit of time on it, but what I do advocate is to make it part of your day-to-day business. How much time do you spend watching telly? Like, you know, anyone who's done anything of any note has had to sacrifice. I'm not saying sacrifice every TV show, but, you know, are you sitting on the tram? Are you interacting with people on the tram? Doesn't mean you can't disconnect, but I think you've got to do it what works for you, but I still think you've got to do effort into it. You know, a lot of corporate people I know have got their phones switched on because they have to answer emails, or do they have to answer emails? They feel like they have to do that. I mean, that to me is a much bigger issue, I think, than social media. People who do social media really well, social media I'm talking about, not content, just social media, it's part of their day-to-day. They want to connect with people. It's this attitude of connecting with people, helping people. It's just what they do on a day-to-day basis. They take photos, that's interesting. I think my network will be interested in that. You know, there's productivity tools out there. There's a thing called bufferapp.com. So if you read a lot of stuff in your area and you'd like to share that, you can just press a button and it'll put it out onto Twitter whenever you want it to. So because I batch read, I can get a lot of stuff. I can get, you know, almost a week's worth of stuff in one reading session, drip fed out over the week. It doesn't mean I don't go in and out of Twitter all the time, but those links, my followers would much rather they're spread out over the week than all in one hit and fill up their stream. So look at some of the tools. There are some pretty good tools out there that you can now do a lot of that stuff. But you do what's comfortable. I'm not here to say you have to do X amount. Content's where it starts to get harder. I spoke to someone today and she said she writes really good pieces, but it takes her 8 hours to do one blog post. That would drive me mad. But it's good quality content and people come to it because of it. So that's the decision you have to make. That's if you decide to do that. You might not want to do that.
Thanks, Trevor. Given that brands can be built quickly, I would assume they can also be damaged quite quickly as well. Are there any risks? And if so, what are the risks? And how do you manage those risks?
As in personally?
Yep. And professionally too.
Yeah, well, as in your brand, you personally, not the company's brand. I think it takes a long time to build a brand. I think it just really does to get those layers, but you can get brought down pretty quick. I think the strongest defence to anything in terms of branding is to have a strong brand. Because the companies that take a hit and really don't recover aren't good brands, because people don't like them. I'm talking companies now. And individuals. But when you see an individual, you know, something, the proverbial hits the fan on them, guess who comes out to support them? People who like them. So the best form of defence against anything that's nasty is actually to have a really strong network of community of fans or supporters, followers, you know, friends. Probably the number one thing is there's a guy called Peter Shankman. He runs a very successful entrepreneur in the States. Peter Shankman, really entertaining speaker. And he runs a thing called Harrow, Help a Reporter Out, which he actually just brought. He was wanting to help, there you go, he wanted to help his journalist mates, he's a PR guy, get to more sources. So he set up a Facebook page, so when a journo wanted to do, you know, they wanted a family of 4 to speak on the budget, he'd put it out there and then people would respond to it. Anyway, he built that into it within a year, building a multi-million-dollar business and sold it because he actually did stuff. I digress. But I saw him at a talk and he said, don't take your phone out when you go out at night. It's the number one thing. because he's got into trouble a little bit just by not doing the text the right way. But I think it's really, I mean, if you're provocative as a writer, you're going to put yourself out there to be at risk a little bit, and that's fine if you're comfortable with that. But I don't really see too much negatives. I see it with companies that aren't strong brands and they don't treat people, they're not connected to people, they're not connected to their marketplace or their community, and they're the ones that get into trouble. If Virgin, which is a really loved and respected brand, went out and did something that wasn't really quite right, what do you think they'd do? They'd apologise in a way that was like, geez, we stuffed that up, and we make sure that won't happen again, and they do it in a fun way. And they'd really make good on it. But because people love them, they'll say that's fine. But if it was probably Qantas at certain times, they cop it more because the brand isn't as strong as it used to be. So I really think that the best form of defence on anything is to build a really strong brand.
Ask some questions.
You said that brand is something that people speak about when you're not in the room.
Jeff Bezos said that.
Yeah. How do you know what people are saying about you when you're?
I don't know. You're kind of spy. Have you got a blank spot in your LinkedIn? You're a spy, so. What were you doing in those times? That's a really good question. I have no idea, but people should tell you. I think if you're online, I'm talking about the people that are online and got content and stuff like that. I know a few guys that actually ask people, what do you think my strengths are? Do you like what I write? You know, if people are going to comment on your blog, you'll find out pretty quick if they don't like you. And there's a difference between not liking you and not respecting you. There's different things. But once again, if you're in the space and you're putting yourself out there a lot, people will interact with you in different ways. But I think you can ask people, did I stuff that up? Oh, sorry about that. Was that a bad thing that I put out? You might put out a tweet that you thought, that was all right. And someone says, that wasn't all right. And then at least you know. So it's a matter of just being aware and monitoring, I think. But in terms of the actual room, and when you walk out there tonight, I don't know. I can't tell you. Go back there.
Do you have any tips for how to get recommendations on LinkedIn? Because every time I ask my boss, she thinks that I'm going to quit.
You want to actually ask your boss?
Well, I want as many as I can get, really. It's kind of a bit delicate.
I've always done it. I shouldn't have really done it. I like endorsing other people, and the ones that I've seen where it's worked really well is people endorse others first, and then it kind of comes back to them. I know a few that have gone for other jobs and they've asked for people to do that, so maybe there is some truth in it. I think it's just really endorsing other people and asking select people where you're really comfortable, and that's really is, you're just building up. If you're doing it all in one hit, it looks sus. And that's when, if I get a whole lot and I see someone's doing it, getting a lot of, almost 100%. Like if I see, on your feed, such and such has got a whole, 3 new recommendations, they're on the move. They are. But if you drip feed it over a period of time, it's under the radar. You just got to go under the radar.
All right, I think that's about all the time we have for question and answers. But we are going to the Prince Alfred Hotel, and Trevor will be there, so you can continue. You can ask some questions there, and you can also meet each other as well. So I'll bring up the map in case you don't know where it is. But it's just up Grattan Street and across to Bouverie Street, the corner of Grattan and Bouverie. That's where Prince Alfred Hotel is. Thanks for coming.